Here in the small town of Ironton, all day and evening, the big news has definitely been the arrest of the sheriff and several others.
We are today handing down our written judgment in cases concerning the sentences of 4 offenders convicted of murder.
Nicola Murray says her son Adarian was following the officer's orders when he was gunned down inside their home.
Away from the repercussions. 1986 is a retired American police officer. While working for the Oklahoma City Police Department, he was convicted in December 2015 of several counts of rape, sexual violence, forceful oral sodomy, and other sexual crimes. Holtzclaw's offenses were initially exposed after a lady claimed he sexually abused her during a traffic check. It prompted an investigation, which revealed a months-long pattern of maltreatment. In total, 13 women made allegations against Holtzclaw. The women claimed similar incidents in which Holtzclaw intimidated and manipulated them. The anxiety in the courtroom was palpable as retired police officer Daniel Holtzclaw awaited his sentence. Holtzclaw had been convicted on 18 charges, and the judge sentenced him to 263 years in jail. His eyes welled up with tears, and he shook as he awaited his fate. Holtzclaw was found guilty on all 18 counts against her. Holtzclaw had criminal backgrounds, including drug offenses, and they were all African Americans. The prosecution contended that Holtzclaw purposefully targeted his victims for these reasons. Holtzclaw's trial and conviction sparked ethical concerns about the role of police enforcement in society. Citizens entrust police officers with protecting and serving their communities as public servants. When they abuse their authority, they hurt individuals and undermine public trust in law enforcement. Number 2. David Carrick. David Carrick, who believed his position as a Metropolitan Police officer made him untouchable as he raped, assaulted, and inflicted irreparable destruction on at least 12 women, some of whom he met online through dating apps, and others whom he attacked after initially appearing charming and luring them into relationships before intimidating them into silence, has been sentenced to life in prison. Carrick had pled guilty to 85 significant offenses he posed, will be sentenced to at least 30 years in prison for his 17-year crime spree. Carrick stood in the dock at Southwark Crown Court, surrounded by his victims in person and through video link, to be informed by the judge that he was the latest high-profile example of a malign misuse of power by a male against women. Carrick, who had pleaded guilty to 85 significant offenses, including 48 rapes, was ultimately brought to prison after a lady chose to disclose the attack on her in October 2021, nearly immediately after another Met officer was sentenced for the murder of Sarah Everard. Victim after victim has testified in court that they were too afraid to denounce him. Carrick had taken monstrous advantage of his position as a police officer, which gave him exceptional powers to coerce and control, according to the court, and had breached his promise to protect the public, causing irreparable devastation. Carrick must serve at least 32 years in prison. Wayne Couzens was a retired Metropolitan Police officer who served for nearly a decade on the force. During his detention, he was a member of the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command. It's the same unit where David Carrick, a former Metropolitan Police officer, worked. Both guys misused their positions as police officers and committed horrible crimes against vulnerable women. In March 2021, he was convicted of sexual assault, kidnapping, and murder in the death of Sarah Everard. Couzens snatched Everard while she was walking home from a friend's house in South London. Everard was located in a wooded location in Kent. The case caused significant anger and protests in the UK about the issue of violence against women. Couzens was apprehended immediately after Everard went missing. He pleaded guilty to all 3 accusations against him during his trial, which took place in September and October of 2021. The court heard how he used his police training and equipment, including handcuffs and a police...
The cases are concerned with life imprisonment for murder and the circumstances in which no minimum term should be specified by the court and instead a whole life order made.
Everard's family and anti-violence against women activists applauded the punishment. Couzens also highlighted concerns about the issue of violence against women in the UK, sparking a broader debate about how police treat women. Number 4. Kenneth Blue. Kenneth Blue's misdeeds as a former cop shocked the community and even law enforcement agencies. Blue committed a particularly horrific act when he murdered Jennifer Webb, a 32-year-old pregnant woman. He reportedly persuaded Webb to meet him in a predetermined location to discuss something. Blue allegedly shot Webb and then abandoned her. A passing motorist discovered Webb's body and contacted 911. Investigators identified Blue as a suspect, and evidence such as a bullet casing and a told. Blue was not mentally competent at the time of the murder, according to the defense. The jury rejected this argument and found him guilty of first-degree murder. Blue was sentenced to life in jail without the possibility of parole, expecting it to bring some degree of justice to Jennifer Webb and her family. Blue was entrusted as a police officer to protect and serve the community, but instead, he used his position to perpetrate a horrible crime and cover up an affair. His actions had far-reaching ramifications for Jennifer Webb, her family, the town, and the reputation of law enforcement as a whole. While the sentencing of Blue provided some closure for those affected by the crime, it also raised serious concerns about the need for improved monitoring and responsibility for law enforcement officers. Number 5. Michael Dautro. Michael Dautro worked for the Edison Police Department in New Jersey. During his career, Dautro was lauded for his labor car. He was charged with stalking, making a false police report, and computer theft. Dautro, dubbed a monster by his wife, pled guilty in 2017 to 1 count of conspiracy to commit official misconduct and 1 act of arson in exchange for prosecutors dropping the remaining accusations against him. Michael Dautro scratched his neck and brow but showed no remorse as he was sentenced to 20 years in state jail for setting fire to the house of a superior officer while the police captain and his family were sleeping inside. Dautro's demeanor remained unchanged as the judge delivered the verdict, and he offered no apology to the family of Capt. Mark Anderko, who had to flee the burning house, no remorse for the witness he tampered with, and no remorse for the other officers who lost their jobs as a result of their involvement with him. Dautro's stern and detached demeanor throughout his sentencing highlighted the enormity of his crimes and his lack of guilt. Dautro, who must spend January 2016 in Portage County Common Pleas Court of assault, unlawful restraint, attempted theft in office, and unauthorized use of the property. He was sentenced to 2 years on probation and compelled to surrender his certificate to work as a police officer in Ohio. David Oliver, a small-town chief who had grown the police department's Facebook audience to 177,000 followers in 10 years, had garnered national acclaim for his pro-police, conservative, eccentric, and amusing rants. However, the chief's outbursts stopped a few weeks following the report in December 2014. Oliver resigned or retired a month later, citing post-traumatic stress disorder the day before his 2-week suspension was to begin. Although the township appointed a new chief and modified its management standards, Officer Crystal Casterline has yet to see the light of day. Oliver is accused of civil assault, wrongful restraint, battery, and sexual harassment by Casterline against him, but he pleaded guilty to all of them. The judge presiding over his case referred to him as a mope, which was ironic given that he used to refer to criminals as mopes on Facebook. Number 7. Zachary Wester. Zachary Wester was a former sheriff's deputy in Jackson County, Florida, but he hid a terrible truth behind his polished badge and uniform. He became addicted to his position's power and began to abuse it in ways that shocked his colleagues and the entire community. He was found guilty of racketeering, governmental misconduct, perjury, forging evidence, and possessing prohibited narcotics. According to the FDL investigation, Wester habitually conducted illegal car searches during traffic stops, planted narcotics or other contraband on motorists, then arrested them on bogus charges and filed fraudulent reports to cover up his actions. Wester allegedly stole money from the motorists he captured in certain situations. The investigation syringe in the man's truck, even though the syringe was later found to be drug-free. Wester was fired from his post as a deputy sheriff in August 2019. He was arrested and accused of various offenses in July 2020, including racketeering, governmental misconduct, forging evidence, wrongful detention, and narcotics possession. The court also charged him with perjury for lying under oath about his behavior during a custody hearing in 2018. Wester was convicted on 19 of the 67 charges brought against him in May 2021, including racketeering, governmental misconduct, forging evidence, false imprisonment, and drug possession. He was sentenced to 12 years in jail for his crimes in July 2021, and the judge ordered him to pay reparations to his victims. Number 8. Aaron Dean. Aaron Dean is a former cop who garnered national prominence in 2019 after being found guilty of manslaughter in the fatal shooting. Kyle Clayton, the psychologist, told jurors that he concluded Dean was not psychologically suitable to serve as a police officer, and that an evaluation revealed Dean had a narcissistic personality style that would impair his judgment. The jury, which debated for approximately 13 hours before reaching the manslaughter judgment, rejected a murder charge that could have sentenced Dean to life in prison. Dean risked up to 20 years in jail if convicted of manslaughter. Prosecutors had asked jurors to sentence him to the longest penalty possible. However, the 2019 incident drew global condemnation and sparked calls for police accountability and racial fairness in law enforcement. Number 9. Dennis Perkins. Dennis Perkins was a former Louisiana police officer convicted of sexual offenses against children. The abuse was discovered in 2017 after a victim informed a school counselor who reported it to police authorities, hence that the claims were part of a conspiracy against him and that the victims had been brainwashed to lie. However, the judge condemned him to 100 years in jail with no chance of release. Perkins has previously worked for the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office, the Baton Rouge Police Department, and the Louisiana Attorney General's Office. His conviction sparked concerns about how he could continue to work in law enforcement amid charges of misbehavior. Following Perkins's conviction, his wife, Cynthia Perkins, was arrested and charged with obstruction of justice. She was accused of attempting to intimidate this witness by paying one of the victims to withdraw their evidence. Cynthia Perkins pled guilty to the charges, and the court sentenced her to 41 years in jail as part of the plea agreement. Number 10. Roy Oliver. Roy Oliver was a police officer in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex in Texas. On May 5, 2017, Oliver was a 15-year-old African-American teenager traveling in the front passenger seat, was killed in the incident. During the incident, the youngster was unarmed, and 2 of his siblings and friends were also inside the vehicle, in addition to Edwards. A 16-year-old brother was driving the automobile and was placed in police custody overnight to be questioned as a witness. Initially, the police stated that there was an unknown altercation with a car backing down the street aggressively toward the officers. Still, after reviewing the body cam footage, Police Chief Jonathan Haber agreed that the car was not even moving toward the officers but rather driving away from them. As a result of this event, Oliver was discharged from the police service in May 2017. Oliver was accused, and an arrest warrant was issued. He subsequently handed himself into the police on the same day, but was later freed after paying a $300,000 bond. His trial was delayed twice before eventually starting in August. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, make sure to check out our other videos for quality content.